going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call roll.
Jim Benage.
Present.
Jeff Elshoff.
Here.
Jeff Haas.
Here.
Betty Martine.
Here.
Justin Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
Wonderful. Thank you. So all of our regularly scheduled meetings, we will open with a moment of silent prayer. If you'll join me in that. Amen. Now please rise and join us in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want to welcome everybody to your regularly scheduled meeting of the Bel Aire City Council. Last meeting before the official start of Major League Baseball, but we're all excited about that. Here we are. For our March 20th meeting, the first thing to come before council this evening is the consent agenda, which consists simply of the minutes from our March 6th, 2018 council meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next item is approval of appropriations ordinance 2018-06, the amount of $256,649.96.
Mr. Mayor, I move motion to approve the appropriations ordinance 18-06.
Second.
First and second, are there any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I have no city requested appearances, but I do have a proclamation for April. The month of April is Child Abuse and Prevention Month. To the citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas, greetings. Whereas children are the embodiment of dreams and aspirations for the future, and as such deserve to grow and develop in nurturing environments free from fear and victimization. Whereas child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure each family has the support it needs in raising their children in safe, nurturing environment. And whereas our society has a responsibility to protect our children and help them thrive in a safe environment, as every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, feel secure, and be free from verbal, sexual, emotional, and physical abuse and neglect. Whereas the city of Bel Aire has dedicated individuals and organizations such as Family Services Center, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office, Department of Family and Children's Services, and the Child Welfare Board, who work daily to counter the problem of child maltreatment and help parents obtain the assistance they need. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among families, social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Now, therefore, I, David Austin, by virtue of the power and authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Bel Aire, do hereby declare the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the city of Bel Aire, and do urge all our citizens to join in dedicating their energies to cherishing our children and helping them grow and develop free from victimization so they may mature into successful adults. Their success is our success. Pass that down. Citizens' concerns, if there's anyone wishing to address council. Seeing none, we'll move on to reports. We'll start with Councilmember Hawes.
Last Thursday, we had a CDC meeting, and we had a quorum. We got a new council chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. The committee is gearing up for the Spring Festival, which is this coming Saturday. So hope for good weather for that. They've got 12,000 eggs for the children to go get. We've got face painting, kite flying, obstacle course, petting zoo, and the Easter Bunny will be there. So very exciting.
Councilmember Benaj?
Yeah, thank you. Last Wednesday, I attended a meeting at Resurrection, and they are in preliminary discussions of expanding their school by 8 classrooms, which would be an additional 160 students at that school, almost double what it is today. I think it's like 220 today, so not quite doubling, but quite an expansion. Anyway, early discussions, so don't know when that will occur, but there is some movement in that area. Also, I think that maybe most of you, everybody has heard that Senator Moran is pushing for there to be an Army command base put in the Wichita area. And I sent a note to Senator Moran suggesting that maybe they consider Bel Aire, because we have plenty of land to market, and this looks like it might be a great opportunity. I don't know how big this command center would be. I understand it won't be like a full-size base like they have at Fort Riley, but it'll be much smaller. But anyway, might be a great opportunity for maybe a future discussion about making a pitch for such a base. So, thank you.
Councilmember Martine?
No report, sir.
Councilmember Smith?
No report.
Councilmember Elsoff?
I have no report.
All right, appreciate that. Councilmember Hawes already mentioned the Easter egg hunt on Saturday, so I hope to see everybody out there for that. Do want to point out a couple of things that are happening on Thursday here. We will have our CCUA meeting, and something I want to call attention to that Councilmember Benaj has spearheaded a group of Bel Aire folks who are going to be preparing and serving a meal at the is it the Interfaith Homeless Shelter?
Interfaith Ministries, yeah,
Ministries,
it's an overflow shelter for the winter. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I was real proud and excited to see that come through. And before I could volunteer, the slots were full.
Take more.
We'll take more, okay. But I understand that Councilmember Smith and his lovely wife will be there, as well as our city manager and his wife and 2 of our city employees, Tristan and Stacy. And that's just one of those things that just really makes you proud to sit up here and be here. So I wanted to thank you for your service on that.
Well, we appreciate everybody's volunteering for that. That's a great thing.
With that, we'll move on to City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a report.
Okay. City Manager.
Just a couple items, Mayor. One you've actually mentioned before, but we did receive notice that a couple of our tree board members have resigned, and so we're looking for some tree board members. Also, the Planning Commission. We had a Planning Commissioner resign, and then the Community Development Committee is always looking for folks. So we have some openings. So if anyone's interested that lives in Bel Aire, please contact any of us here at City Hall and we'll get some information to them. That was all I had, Mayor.
Appreciate it. With that, we'll move into ordinances, resolutions, and final actions. Do want to let the audience know and everybody watching at home that that our governing body has held 2 workshops now since the new inductions here, and we're taking a look at a lot of our policies and reviewing those. And I think that's something that it's smart to do annually, or at least biannually, really just kind of taking a look and making sure they're still prudent and make sure they're still up to date and working for our current needs. So you'll see on the agenda we actually have 3 policies. Our volunteer policy, we have a social media policy, and a funding for senior club policy that is on there. All things that have been discussed at recent workshops. We also have, we'll hear our street improvement plan, and we'll vote on our master growth plan, which I think we've talked about at length. So looks like a pretty short agenda, but some very important, exciting things happening here for us this evening. So I'm going to jump right into it, because our first 2 items, one is a a memorandum of understanding, but first is a fee resolution. This is a resolution concerning service license and permit fees. Again, this is something we talked about quite a bit at our February 22nd workshop, and we discussed suggested fee changes to the recreation, and those changes were considered at our last council meeting, but we decided to table that. The reason why we did that was we wanted to have a combination membership that consisted of a combination pool and rec center membership. I know those were inadvertently left out, but this resolution is before us again this evening, and that includes the fee schedule that has the combination fee as requested by council. I want to see if there are any questions on that. Not, but entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve a resolution concerning service, license, and permit fees within the corporate limits of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, as presented, and authorize the mayor to sign.
A second?
First and second, any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item B, in 2015, the city received a federal grant to hire an SRO, which stands for a School Resource Officer. The grant covered 70% of the cost, with Bel Aire paying just the 30%. That grant expired last year, but required the city to keep the officer for at least 12 additional months. Our staff worked with USD 259 on an agreement where the city would retain the SRO if USD 259 paid 50% of the cost. The school district agreed, and the addendum to the memorandum of understanding is up for council consideration. This officer is a Bel Aire police officer with all rights and privileges as a Bel Aire officer, but during the when school is in session, she does visit both the private and public schools here, and is on patrol, like I said, when the school is not in session. So I want to see if there are any questions for our city attorney or city manager on this. Yeah, I would just say I'm excited to know that, again, we can share the cost of something like that with a dual benefit. So.
I don't really have any questions, but I do have some comments after some discussion with city manager and with our city attorney. I'll vote for this resolution because I agree that we need to have these SRO officers. I think our situation that happened in Maryland this morning was a great example of that, the tragedy that happened there. But SRO officers are not enough to protect our kids. We need a stronger line of defense, and I think we need to be pushing for concealed carry for administrators and teachers that want to do that. I would never force anybody into that situation, but I think that's something we need to be petitioning the school board and, if necessary, the legislature to do. Also, I am a little miffed that we need to sign a contract with the school board. Our schools are among the top 15 in finance in the country. Kansas schools are. I don't care what these reports say or what our Supreme Court says. Those are the facts. Just go check them out. We finance our schools at $13,800 per child in this district. That's over $276,000 per classroom. That's an enormous amount of money. So I'm very concerned about a school board that wants us to share these costs when they are so flush with money. I'm not against funding public education. I think it's a great thing, but I also know that Resurrection funds their students at $4,700 a student per year. So 3 times the cost is something that really needs to be questioned, accountability. I'm hoping that our new school board will take to heart these things and do some things to improve their fiscal responsibility. So this is a good example of what happens when we take federal money. We're now stuck with a public policy that we need to continue. So I think in future, when we look at federal money, we need to be careful what strings are attached to it, both political strings and legal strings. And this one has political strings. Whether it has legal strings or not is not an issue. So SRO officers are a great thing. So I will support this, but I want to make sure that it's a record that we need to think a little more outside the box on these. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I second what Councilman Benaj was saying about our school resource officer. I think this is a great program, and this morning's shooting, while tragic, is a good example of how they do help keep our students safe. I guess the only concern I have is strictly budgetary, because we absolutely need to have this program. And so I'm just a little bit curious on the question for the city manager as to how will this increase in funding affect our current police budget?
Actually, it won't. It expired last fall, and so the grant did. And so we started talking with 259 about funding options and asked if they would, if they wanted to keep the officer in the schools, and would they be willing to pay half the cost, and they said yeah. So when we were putting the budget together for this year, we included 100% of the cost, because we knew we had to keep that officer. And then in the fall, when we found out that they wanted to continue with the SRO position and pay 50% of the cost, that allowed us to have this year really about 50% of a salary that is being reimbursed to us. So financially, we're fine. There's
So
no
we had planned
concern.
to extend.
Yeah, because
these
we knew
funds.
we had to keep the position, so
Okay.
we budgeted for that, and then we did negotiate, because at that point, we were considering taking that position out of the schools, and we approached them and said, would you like to keep that SRO in your schools, and if so, would you be willing to pay 50%? And they said, yeah.
I guess my second question is, can you talk a little bit about how we came up with the 50% number? Something that I'm trying to think through, and maybe a little bit of what Councilmember Benaj was alluding to. So I'm struggling with not whether this position should exist, because I absolutely think it's necessary, but what budget should it come out of, right? We as taxpayers, we pay taxes both to USD 259 and we pay taxes to the city of Bel Aire. And when I think about this position, it seems like it's a position that's more necessary for the safe operation of the school than it is for the operation and maintenance of the city. And so it seems to me like it would be more appropriate for it to be fully funded by the school as opposed to partially funded by the school. So I'm curious how we kind of arrived at that 50% number.
The way we arrived at that was, number one, the school calendar days is like 180, 190 days. And so when, like, for example, this week when there's kids are on spring break, our officers out on the streets. And then all during the summer, Christmas break, those type of things. So whenever they are out of school, the officer is out patrolling. So you figure in, at least 3 months of the year, that position is actually on the streets, working for the city. The other piece of it is that we also wanted to ensure that, because we have private schools here, that she was allowed to spend some time at the private schools as well. So it wasn't just all at the high school. So she spends a majority of time at the high school, but she does go over to the Isley, the grade school, and then also to Sunrise and Resurrection. Not as much time there, but she does do some programs there and stuff as well.
Okay. So those times when our school resource officer isn't in school and she's patrolling the streets and helping with that capacity, is that saving the city in part-time officer labor that we would otherwise be paying, or do we just have extra capacity during those times?
It just allows us, the goal is that we always have 2 officers on duty every shift. And what that allows is a lot of officers like to take off during the summer for vacation, so we get the coverage from that position during the summer when we do have officers off, so therefore we don't have overtime or situations where we may only have 1 officer on duty.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak on this topic and just say that I stand behind what Councilman Benaj had to say, his concerns, his statements. I completely agree with everything he had to say about this, and I share Councilman Smith's concerns as well. I think just as a culture and as a country, we need to have our schools secured, and we need to do whatever it takes to get there. So, thank you. And I do intend to vote for this resolution, so.
Any other comments, questions? Not, then I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to approve the amendment to the memorandum of understanding with USD 259 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, next we're going to move into our policies. At the March 13th workshop just last week, we discussed a background check policy for rec center volunteers. I think it's vital that the city take actions that ensure the safety of our children and participants. We've not had any incidents, and we want to keep it that way. Our city attorney worked with the recreation director to create the policy on the agenda, the policy that's on the agenda for our consideration this evening, and I had a chance to look through that and appreciate the conversation we were able to have last week and to work on this. Questions or comments? No. Entertain a motion on item C.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the Bel Aire Recreation Volunteer Policy as presented and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
First and second, are there any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. All righty, next is our street improvement plan. This came up at our February workshop, and we talked about it again at the March workshop. And Stephen, who is our city engineer, presented a list of the funds that are available for roads as well as street projects that she suggested. Council discussed the projects, and based on that direction, Ann was able to solicit bids for the specific projects. So on the agenda, the action we have here this evening is to accept the bid from PP&J in the amount of $141,050 for their road work to be done here in Bel Aire. And Ann is here if anybody has any questions.
So these are all the projects we talked about in the workshop, the same projects?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would like to remind the council and members of the public that these are not all of the street projects. Our city staff will be working on some projects themselves that will mainly be focused on the crack sealing and thermal crack repair. Some of this work was started last year over on the Farmstead area.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
on Greenwich Road, I know we own the whole road. Is there any residents that's on the other side that are in Bel Aire?
There's no residents over there currently having a Bel Aire address. They're all within the county or within that, I believe it's that small community that's over there. Is that Greenwich?
And the same way with Webb Road?
Webb Road, we have some of our business park, Sunflower Commerce Park abuts Webb Road, but we do not have any specific residents along there.
But we own the whole road.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the only question I have is in our workshop, we discussed the discrepancy between the cash available for our street improvements and the total cost of these outsourced projects. There's around a $20,000 discrepancy. So the question for the city manager is, if we were to approve this, how would we fund it? Because I absolutely want to do all of these projects. I think they're all really necessary. I'm just concerned with how do we get the funds for that?
Yes, the finance director was going to, because there was money allocated last year for 53rd Street, actually move the money into the capital improvement fund,
and then out of there pay the various street projects. And that fund has a balance of, I believe he was saying, around 300,000. And so he felt that that additional 20,000 that to cover the roads that council wanted to cover would just come out of that capital improvement fund and delete it somewhat.
All right.
And just to follow up on that, we did talk with PP&J to see if they could reduce their price at all, and they'd already given us the best price that they were available, or they were able to, given that they could come in as it fit their schedule. So that was already built into the price that they had given us.
All right. Thank you.
And I do want to say I appreciate, the breakdown here, just so everybody knows. The 141,000, we're talking thermal crack repairs on Greenwich and Webb, doing some curb and gutter replacement, also doing some patch repair, 46 east of Baton. And I do appreciate the written recommendation here that if we want to stay underneath this 120,386, I think Councilmember Smith was talking about there, that staff would then say that thermal crack repairs on Webb could be pushed to 2019 if we had to pick and choose. But and these also want to let everybody know that the city staff will be working on a number of streets this year with doing the sealing and the patching that we talked about earlier. And just want to read that list here. Edgemore between 38th and 41st, Farmstead Courts, Park Vista, Rodeo, Pearson's Addition, Summit Hill, and Eagle Lake. So it's nice to see a list of a number of roads. I know we had last year, a couple of big ticket roads that were just at that critical point, and now we're able to do that and still do some of these other street repairs. I think every single one of us up here have talked about the importance of that, so I appreciate having all that information here this evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I want to make a motion to approve the 2018 street improvement plan at the cost of $141,050 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All righty. So make a lot of people happy. All right, item E, going back some of our policies, we're looking at social media and website. Social media, as just about everybody knows, has pretty much become the norm for communication. Staff has felt that our policy needed some updating and presented those changes at our March 13th workshop, and it is now on the agenda for final adoption.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the Bel Aire social media and website policy as presented and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item F is senior funding policy. We're going back 10 years to 2008 when we created a policy on how the senior center and the senior club were to be financed. At the time, the decision was made to fund the senior center that we get from the Sedgwick County grant, and that $2,500 would be allotted to the senior club. The 2018 budget contained $4,000, which is a $1,500 increase in funding, which requires a change in the policy. After discussing it at length again in our last workshop, council felt it was appropriate to simply state the senior club would receive funding as budgeted each year, so the policy does not need to be changed, but we want to vote on that because we did make that change that says we don't need to change it, if that makes any sense.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I motion to approve the Bel Aire seniors funding policy as presented and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item G, our final item for this evening, is the master growth plan. We had our marketing officials as well as staff requested that the city adopt a master growth plan that would identify the best location for certain uses. Last year, the city contracted with the law company and PEC to create this plan. We had a citywide survey We took input on social media. We had open houses and numerous meetings were utilized to create the final plan for council consideration, taking all of that different input. The Planning Commission approved the plan at their March 15th meeting. So it's been through all the public and the Planning Commission, and it is now before council for us to adopt this evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I do want to say I attended the Planning Commission meeting last week where they reviewed this master growth plan. I want to thank them for their diligence in reviewing this. They did make some amendments to it where they caught that there were some errors and made some, I think, really good improvements to that plan. And so I just want to thank them for their efforts and their diligence in that.
I appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much, and thank you for doing that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make sure we have a couple clarifying comments and not in opposition to this, but this does not include the northeast park, the park that's planned for northeast of City Hall that has been proposed in the workshop we talked about. And that this is not a binding plan, that if we come up with other uses, we certainly have the option to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
do we have the choice not to adopt this before we have a public hearing? Or not a public hearing, but open it to the public for town hall meetings? And let them have their input on it?
Yes, we could. I'm going to defer to our city attorney and city manager, but I mean, we could if you wanted to. I mean, it was the, we did all the, gathered input last year, and I think exactly like what Councilmember Benaj just said, this is adopting. We're saying we're wanting to do something, move forward. It doesn't bind us that we have to do everything that's in the plan. It doesn't mean it's just this kind of a good direction, a good arrow, a good pointer. And certainly before we were to do anything, including looking at a park or looking at something like that, we will absolutely, you have my word up here, that absolutely citizens' input will be sought. So yeah, tonight we're just kind of adopting, just so it's official, I guess. Am I saying that correct, City Attorney?
Yes, I think Councilmember Martine, you're referring to the comprehensive plan, which is the most official plan that drives how the city will grow, and that does go through Planning Commission. But generally, you have your master growth plan that sets the general guidelines, and then you use that to make the comprehensive plan that guides the work that Planning Commission will do, and that goes through a public hearing and everything. So you can be assured that the public will have a chance to hear and give their comments on a plan that looks a lot like this.
Okay.
Well, and we did include, we did have a open house that we had people come in and give that actually helped create this. And so we took the feedback from the community-wide survey that helped, and then they put this together on a map, and then it went to, we held an open house with this, and we had the park plan and those types of things, gathered that input, and then from that point they put it together in this plan that then council reviewed, and then we sent it to the Planning Commission last week, and now it's back to you for final adoption. And as the mayor said, it's just a plan. It just helps us as staff when we have people come and say, I'd like to build a car wash, and we can say, well, according to public input and the way that we see our growth, this would probably be a good location. Rather than them saying that they want it, across from City Hall or something like that. So, and as the mayor said, it will evolve. And as Jackie also said, Keith is going to be working with the Planning Commission on our comprehensive plan, because that does need to be at least reviewed every year, and he's going to be taking some of the information out of here to go through that comprehensive plan, and you'll be seeing that later on this summer probably.
So this is just a general guideline to where commercial, residential, industrial would fit best
Right.
according to our vision.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I did have a question for the city manager. I believe it was 2 workshops ago, we had discussed the making this available either on the website or on the Facebook page or all, wherever we can. Is that still what we're planning to do? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so we didn't want to do that yet before you all had given your blessings to the plan. And so yes, if you approve it tonight, then we'll start really pushing it out there so that the public and those interested in developing in Bel Aire see that we have a plan, and this is the way we see the future of the city going. And hopefully that gives them some comfort when they come in and say, well, I'd like to develop 80 acres, and I see your plan, and I see your vision, and I agree with that, and I want to be part of it. So.
Yeah, I think that partially addresses Councilwoman Martine's concern about that when the public is able to take a look at this, they can give their input, and we'll take that into consideration. So I think I can speak for everybody up here to say that we encourage all residents to come take a look at this. It'll be available. Look through it, read through it, and if you have concerns or thoughts or input, we're going to be receptive to that. So
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the Bel Aire Master Growth Plan.
Second.
First and second, are there any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I guess the only comment that I would have is perhaps in the future, I might suggest that we go ahead and publish these in advance of approving it, so that the public does have that opportunity to contact us with questions or concerns or input before we even approve it. I think that, going ahead and approving it now is great, and then if people have suggestions or concerns, we can amend this thing as many times as we need to, and so that's definitely not an issue. But I think the sooner that we can get feedback from people, the better off we are. So.
I do want to point out, like I said, we've had public meetings and been taking along, and we're going to continue to take it. So absolutely, I think we'll do that. Hear that up here. Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I have no need for an executive session. Okay. Do you want to just remind everybody about the Easter egg hunt this Saturday, and want to remind everybody that we are looking for volunteers for some of our committees and boards here to contact City Hall if you're interested in that. If there's no other business to come before council this evening, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
First, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. We are adjourned at 7:37.